No species will ever forget the moment when humans finally lost their patience, but the truth is, no one recognized that moment when it first began. It started quietly in the high chambers of the Galactic Concord, where power was measured in seniority and voices were weighted by age, not wisdom. Humans were new then. Polite. Careful. Their diplomats spoke slowly, listened intently, and accepted compromises that left others richer and stronger. The council mistook this for weakness. Ambassador Elias Monroe stood beneath the crystal arches more times than history would remember, his posture calm, his tone measured. When trade tariffs were raised against Earth shipping lanes, he nodded. When human colonies were reassigned under temporary administrative review, he filed appeals instead of threats. The council praised humanity's maturity while quietly congratulating itself on how easy they were to manage. They called humans cooperative, reasonable, predictable. Behind closed doors, other species used less flattering terms. Docile, harmless. Humans came from a loud, divided world, yet in the stars they were restrained, almost overly respectful. Their fleets were modest, their weapons unremarkable, their technology solid but never impressive. They were invited to speak, rarely to decide. What the council never understood was that humans were not restraining themselves out of fear. They were restraining themselves out of choice. The first warning came during the Helios Resource Accord, when human mining rights were quietly voided due to clerical misalignment. Entire settlements were displaced overnight. Monroe stood before the chamber and asked only one question. Would the council like that decision formally entered into the permanent record? Amused murmurs followed. Of course, they said. Transparency was a virtue. So the humans recorded everything. Every dismissed petition. Every redirected trade lane. Every denial disguised as protocol. Each time, Monroe thanked the council for its clarity and returned home with another entry added to an ever-growing archive. Some delegates found the human smile unsettling. It never faded even when their people suffered. Even when ships were seized. Even when their protests went unanswered. To many, that smile confirmed what they already believed. Humans lacked the spine for galactic politics. No one asked why a species capable of surviving Earth's history would find interstellar insults intolerable. No one wondered how long patience could last when tested again and again. And no one noticed that humans had stopped asking for fairness and had begun preparing for something else entirely. The second phase of humanity's patience was marked not by protest, but by precision. Human diplomats became meticulous to the point of obsession. Meetings were transcribed. Statements were time-stamped. Decisions were archived across redundant systems. The council interpreted this as bureaucratic overcompensation, unaware that humans were building something far more dangerous than weapons. At the Orion Transit Summit, Ambassador Monroe stood again beneath the crystal lights as 6 major trade corridors through human space were reclassified as restricted military zones. Decades of shared commerce vanished in a single vote. When Monroe politely inquired about economic displacement, the presiding counselor dismissed the concern as an unfortunate but necessary inconvenience. The human delegation acknowledges this ruling, Monroe said evenly. We trust the council's records will reflect the sequence of decisions that led here. Laughter followed. Someone muttered that humans loved paperwork more than power. 3 months later came the terraforming denial. Overpopulation strained multiple human colonies, but expansion permits were rejected without debate. Those same permits were fast-tracked for luxury habitats owned by council-aligned corporations bordering human systems. Monroe's smile remained, but several delegates later admitted his eyes had changed. Let the record show, he said calmly, that the human delegation raised concerns regarding long-term stability. The council president interrupted him. Threats are unnecessary. Monroe inclined his head. I'm not making threats. I am ensuring accuracy. Accuracy, it turned out, was the most dangerous weapon humanity possessed. Privately, some junior analysts began to worry. Humans never escalated, never retaliated, never postured. They absorbed every slight without visible response. That level of restraint felt unnatural. Predators, after all, did not snarl at every provocation. They conserved energy. They waited. Still, the council saw no reason to reconsider. Humanity's fleets remained unchanged. Their technology exports stayed modest. Their military exercises were transparent and conservative. If humans were planning something, surely there would be signs. There were. Human shipyards expanded quietly. Research stations multiplied. Civil defense drills became more frequent, though never advertised. Entire production lines shifted toward classified projects hidden behind civilian designations. The humans did not conceal these actions. They simply never explained them. And no one bothered to ask. The warnings, when viewed later, were obvious. Human ambassadors stopped requesting votes and began submitting formal notices. They stopped negotiating and began documenting. They stopped appealing to morality and started appealing to history. The council mistook silence for surrender. What they were witnessing was patience reaching its limit, not snapping but crystallizing into resolve. Humans were no longer hoping the council would change. They were preparing for the moment it would not. That moment arrived aboard a research vessel carrying children, drifting through space that humans had been told, too late, was no longer theirs. The destruction of the human research vessel Stellar Dawn lasted less than 12 seconds. That was all it took to erase decades of restraint. The ship was unarmed, clearly marked, and broadcasting civilian credentials when Council patrol ships opened fire. On board were scientists, educators, and 23 children participating in their first deep space learning expedition. No warnings were issued. No inspections attempted. The Council later called it a navigational misunderstanding. Humanity called it murder. When news reached Earth, there were no riots. No declarations of war. No speeches filled with rage. Instead, every human embassy across known space transmitted a single message. All diplomatic engagements were suspended pending a full review of Council actions. 3 days later, Commander Aaron Vale entered the Galactic Concord chamber unannounced. He did not wait for permission. He did not bring an honor guard. His uniform was immaculate, his expression empty. "You will play the recording," he said, placing a data crystal on the central podium. The footage showed children floating in zero gravity, laughing, documenting experiments, recording messages for families back home. One girl waved at the camera and said thank you to the Council for allowing their journey. The feed cut to static as weapons fire tore through the hull. Silence followed. Real silence. The kind that suffocates. "You classified this as an unfortunate incident," Vale said quietly. "You said our children should not have been there." He placed a handwritten note on the podium. "This was my daughter's last message. She wrote it while your ships were locking weapons." No one interrupted him. "For years," Vale continued, "you mistook our patience for submission. You mistook our restraint for fear. That ends now." Across the chamber, Ambassador Monroe stepped forward. For the first time since humanity joined the Concord, he was not smiling. "The human species does not forget," he said. "And we do not forgive the killing of our young." At that moment, long-range sensors across the chamber activated simultaneously. Hundreds of human vessels appeared on tactical displays, emerging from folds of space no one believed they could access. Ships once considered outdated shed their outer layers, revealing technologies that rewrote known physics. The Council realized too late that humanity had never been weak. They had simply been patient enough to wait until the lesson would never be forgotten. The war did not unfold as the Council expected. There were no prolonged campaigns, no heroic last stands, no opportunity for adaptation. Human fleets moved with terrifying coordination, disabling defenses before resistance could form. Entire armadas vanished without debris, erased by weapons that bent space, gravity, and matter itself. 6 minutes after the first engagement, the Council's military capacity ceased to exist. 6 days later, the political restructuring was complete. Humanity did not claim territory. They did not demand tribute. They did not exterminate their enemies. Instead, they imposed reforms. Mandatory transparency. Civilian protection mandates. Permanent oversight committees staffed by neutral species. Every decision, every vote, every action subject to what humans called the Stellar Dawn Standard. Would this choice protect the innocent? Would you defend it if a child asked why it was necessary? Counselors who protested were reminded of the footage. Of the note. Of the cost of arrogance. Ambassador Monroe presided over the first session of the reformed Concord. His smile returned, but now it carried weight. Not menace. Certainty. Humanity had proven its strength and chosen restraint once again, not because it had to, but because it could. Across known space the story spread. Species that had mocked human diplomacy now studied it. Military academies rewrote doctrines. Political theorists coined new terms to describe what had happened, though none captured it fully. Patience, it turned out, was not a moral flaw. It was a strategic luxury. Human fleets remained visible at the edges of major systems, never threatening, never retreating. Watching. Waiting. A reminder, not a promise. Humanity had lost its patience once, and the galaxy had barely survived the lesson. In time, trade resumed. Alliances stabilized. The Concord endured, changed forever by the knowledge that kindness backed by overwhelming strength was more terrifying than cruelty alone. Children's research vessels now traveled with escorts, protected by treaties no one dared violate. Every council chamber, every diplomatic hall, bore a simple inscription translated into all known languages. Patience is not weakness. Restraint is not surrender. And those who choose kindness do so because they can afford not to. No species ever forgot the moment humans finally lost their patience. Because humanity made certain it would never happen again.